Michael Jordan is regarded as the best scorer in NBA history, having the highest career average of 30.1 points. MJ elevated those numbers to an astonishing 33.4 points in the postseason. His greatness, popularity, and fame is unlike any basketball player we have ever seen. Before winning championships, MJ's scoring numbers were even greater, with a lack of supporting cast during the 80s. How's it going, guys? My name's Wilson. Today, we'll take a look at every time a player averaged at least 40 points per game in a playoff series and how often they win those series. Starting from the beginning of time, Elgin Baylor joined the 1962 finals, became the first player to put up over 40 points a game in a playoff series. Many remember Wilt Chamberlain's 50-point average and Oscar's triple-double season, but Baylor averaged an astonishing 38.3 points, played just 48 games due to military duties. One of the most forgotten all-time greats, there was no stopping Elgin. Scored 502 total points, averaged 18 rebounds. In the finals, the Celtics were loaded with 4 All-Stars, and it's unfortunate Baylor would suffer many defeats in the hands of Bill Russell. Remarkably, Elgin scored at least 34 points in each of the 7 games. After Boston tied the series at 2, Baylor went off in Game 5, April 14th, a playoff record high 61 points, which wouldn't be broken until 24 years later. Hit 17 of 19 free throws. LA outscored Boston 33-22 in the 4th for a 5-point win. At 6'5", being acrobatic and decades ahead of his time, in an era where there was no 3-point line, him and Jerry West combined for 68 points in Game 6, but that wouldn't be enough. Losing a heartbreak in overtime of Game 7, Baylor dropped 41, 11 more than the highest scoring Celtic. After all his accomplishments, he sadly never won a title and doesn't get as much recognition as the years go by. 3 years later, Elgin's teammate Jerry West put up a postseason record best 46.3 points. Western Division Finals, Mr. Clutch scored at least 42 points in each of the 6 games. Absolutely ridiculous. 49 in Game 1. If that wasn't enough, 52 in Game 2. In the losses of Games 3 and 4, 44 and 48 points, followed by 43 and 42 in the closeout. Shot over 45% for the series. West had to carry the early load since Baylor only played 5 minutes the whole series. With a severe knee injury, West single-handedly carried the Lakers to the finals. His averages for the whole series might never be topped. Having incredible basketball IQ, amazing handles, composed, his shooting abilities were off the charts. Also connected on 86 of 95 free throws, the local simply has one of the best basketball minds the world has ever seen, even more successful being in the front office, forming multiple dynasties. 2 years later, Rick Barry, also one of the most underrated all-time greats. The 6'7" small forward was one of the most versatile players the game has ever seen. During the 1967 finals against the Sixers, Barry averaged 40.8 points. Long before the existence of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, the San Francisco Warriors had Barry, an unstoppable scorer that never went down without a fight. There were still only 10 teams back then. Philly and Boston were head and shoulders better than everybody. Barry led his team to a 44-37 record, best in the West, a heavy underdog against one of the greatest teams all time, had at least 30 points in each of the 6 games. Many believe the Sixers, led by Wilt Chamberlain, Hale Greer, Cheat Walker, and Billy Cunningham, would demolish Golden State and perhaps sweep them, but Barry gave them a taste of their own medicine. Dropped 55 points in Game 3, attempted 48 shots, but did whatever it took to win, followed by a 43-point effort in the loss, had 44 in Game 6, where the Sixers came back in the 4th, so close to taking Wilt to 7 games. It was amazing how Rick would be so dominant this early in his career. Most impressively, Barry was only in his 2nd season. His point average increased by over 10 from his rookie year. After having contract disputes, Barry decided to take his talents to the ABA afterwards, where he continued to dominate for several years. Because he was disliked by many of the players, Barry's name never gets mentioned much. 17 years later, 1984, the very first round, an epic showdown between Bernard King's Knicks and Isaiah Thomas's Pistons. King put on the show, averaged an incredible 42.6 points on an efficient 60% shooting in the 5-game series. One of the most underrated players all time. He was the king of New York before Patrick Ewing. Finished 2nd for MVP voting that season. Detroit had home court. Bernard netted 36 in Game 1, 46 in Game 2, 46 again in Game 3. After Detroit tied the series, King still dropped 41. In the pivotal Game 5, Isaiah poured in 16 points in 94 seconds to force overtime, but King poured in 44 of his own, including 12 boards on 17 of 26 shooting. Remarkably, didn't even make a 3-point shot the whole series and attempted only 1. Whether it was in transition or posting up at the very prime of his career, before the injuries occur, Bernard averaged 34.8 points the entire 84 postseason. The 6'7" small forward eventually made the Hall of Fame in 2013. Just 2 years later, Michael Jordan, 1986 first round against Boston, 43.7 points, 50% shooting. Despite losing all 3 games, the 86 Celtics remain one of the best teams in NBA history with prime Bird, prime McHale, prime Parrish, a total of 5 Hall of Famers. As we seen from The Last Dance, MJ dropped 49 in Game 1. With Boston losing only 1 home game that whole season, 67 regular season wins, MJ scored almost half the Bulls' points for a 30-win team that was trying to tank. Despite playing just 18 games, MJ absolutely refused to sit out and performed as well as any 23-year-old the game has ever seen. Bird, McHale, Parrish, and Johnson each scored between 23 to 30 points in the first game. Game 2 still remains one of the most iconic games in NBA history. Bird labeled Jordan as God in disguise. A playoff record 63 points, breaking Elgin Baylor's mark, didn't even attempt a single 3, went 19 of 21 from the line, 22 of 41 from the field. Boston was close to unbeatable at home. The fact that Jordan single-handedly took the C's to double overtime showed his greatness. 34 years since, this performance still gets talked about highly to this very day. Getting all these buckets, the C's would easily win Game 3, but MJ would continue to dominate in many more series the later years. Which leads us to Jordan again, the 1988 first round series against Cleveland, 45.2 points on an efficient 56% shooting. Not only was he dominating offensively, but also added 2.8 steals, 1.6 blocks, having one of the most complete years of anybody, winning MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star Game MVP, Slam Dunk Champion, put up 35 a game in the regular season, was also the best defender in the NBA. Rookie Scottie Pippen wasn't established yet. Nobody on his team averaged more than 10.8 points for the series. 5 Cavs players averaged more than a dozen. Because this wasn't one of his title years, Jordan's masterpiece performance doesn't get talked about enough. Went off for 50 in the first game for a comeback win. If that wasn't enough, the MVP took his game to another level, responded with 55 in Game 2, also had 4 steals, 38 in Game 3, the lowest he scored that series. 44 in Game 4 wasn't enough. MJ responded with a casual 35, good enough to close out the series in Game 5. Hit the shot against the same Cavs team the year after because of the game winner. That series was a lot more popular than this one. Having some of the best games of his career against Cleveland, you better believe those players are still haunted by Jordan's greatness to this day. 2 years later, you guessed it, Michael Jordan again, this time the 1990 semifinals against Charles Barkley Sixers. A 43-point average, 55% shooting in the 2-versus-3 matchup. Sir Charles finished second for MVP behind Magic, MJ third, but also had a very strong case. In the series, Jordan gave Barkley and the entire Sixers the business. Outscored Chuck every single one of these games. 39 points in Game 1, 45 in Game 2, 49 in the Game 3 loss. Most superstars tend to have a bad game after a couple monster ones, but Jordan never took his foot off the pedal. Had 45, dished out 11 dimes, giving his team a 3-1 series lead. Outscored Barkley and Johnny Dawkins combined in Game 5. Also had 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 6 steals. Shot over 65% for the game, having insane all-around numbers. An absolute dazzling display. Flash forward another 2 years. Of course, the GOAT once again. First round series, Miami. Averaged 45 points on 61% shooting. An easy 3-game series sweep. His highest point average for any playoff series. The best 3-game stretch of anybody in the postseason. Jordan scored a total 759 points that playoffs. The highest total to this very day, doing so with a first round series the best of 5. If it was the best of 7, you can almost guarantee Jordan would have scored around 40 points if there was a Game 4. Just like in the previous series, MJ didn't have to attempt a single 3-pointer. Steve Smith and Glenn Rice had no chance getting the best seed to taste the full Michael Jordan experience. MJ only had to play 35 minutes, pouring in 33 in Game 2, saved his best for last to close out one of his best games. Shot 20 of 30 from the field, 56 points, 16 of 18 from the line in the 5-point win, gave diehard Miami Heat fans a tasting glimpse of what playoff basketball was all about. The franchise's first ever playoff appearance in year 4, MJ was by far the hottest show in South Beach, giving them the 56-piece. The very next year, the 1993 NBA Finals, in my opinion, the best basketball player that has ever walked the face of the earth between 91 and 93 was absolutely peak Jordan. 41 points a game on the biggest stage, also 8.5 rebounds, over 6 assists, 51% shooting, 40% from deep. After Charles Barkley won MVP, a controversial decision, Jordan absolutely destroyed, abused, annihilated, humiliated, and embarrassed Barkley and the Suns in every way imaginable, just like in previous series against against other worthy opponents. Started off with 31 points in game 1, shot 50% from the field. That was actually his worst game of the series, followed by a near triple-double, 42, 12, and 9 in game 2, escaped with a 3-point win, taking a 2-0 series lead against a 62-win team. Kevin Johnson had nightmares heading into Chicago. Phoenix did show a lot of fight, stealing game 3 in triple overtime despite MJ's 44 with a 3-peat at stake, something that wasn't achieved since the 60 Celtics. Magic and Bird weren't able to accomplish this feat. Jordan only turned the ball over 2.7 times this series, refused to let his team lose in game 4, went absolute bananas, dropped 55 on 21 shots. Dan Marley, Richard Dumas, Barkley, and Danny Ainge were all helpless. Not only did Michael humiliate Barkley on the court, the day before game 4, according to Bulls assistant Johnny Botch, MJ and Charles played golf 48 holes, brought Chuck a $20,000 diamond earring. Asked what did you do all that for? MJ responded, so he won't get in my way the rest of the series. What's $30,000 to me? Charles thinks we're great friends. I hate that fact. Barkley was also one of the most brash and confident players at the time. Strongly believed he was the best player all season, very confident he was going to win the series, but after losing the first 2 games to Mike, he quoted, "I don't know if I can beat this guy. I never said that about another basketball player in my life. He might actually be better than me." After feeling defeated and helpless, there's absolutely no shame in never winning a title when you fall to Michael Jordan. For game 6, MJ scored 33, had every point in the 4th until John Paxson stepped up and sank the dagger, giving the Bulls a 1-point win. Having 4 straight 40-point games during the finals, no other player scored 40+ in more than 2 consecutive finals games. Honorable mentions includes Jordan again. The 89 first-round series against Cleveland, 39.8 points, ended game 5 with the shot connected on 52% of his buckets. The 2 closest players to average 40 since Jordan, LeBron's 38.5 points against the Magic, 2009 Eastern Conference Finals, Shaq 38 a game, the 2000 Finals. It's remarkable, no other player has averaged 40 points in the series almost 30 years later, which just goes to show the greatness and dominance of Michael Jordan. Based on efficiency, 6 of the 7 highest shooting percentages of guys to average 40 in the series came from MJ himself. West, Baylor, and Rick Barry all shot 45% and below. Of these 5 players, MJ was the only one to do this multiple times, 5 to be exact, more than everybody else on this list combined. Is 6-3 all time in the playoff series. None of these guys were power forwards and centers, which just goes to show when you need somebody to dominate a big game, no matter if it was the first round or the NBA Finals, in any situation, there is nobody you'd rather have than Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Thank you so much for watching this video. Do you see anybody in today's game averaging 40 points in a playoff series? Let me know in the comments below. I love all of you. See you next time.